SPD's future is now SPD's present and soon to be SPD's past, but crazy to think that you could rewatch the 2005 13th season of Power Rangers again in 2025 as though it's the chronologically set, current, correct season. And unlike Dino Charge, it's not set in another dimension. No, this is main chronology apparently, as established by the show, the comics like Soul of the Dragon, and I guess Adam and Aisha have been busy with all that work in SPA alongside Once and Always. And now here we are with an established continuity and alien colonies on Earth in the present future. If Saban still owned it, we'd no doubt have conflicting continuity by now because there'd be another series on the air. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's go into judgment mode as we can finally talk 5 things about Power Rangers Space Patrol Delta in the Lightning Collection. Number 5. A decorated history. So Bandai did them back in 2005 as the series was airing. Bandai Japan teamed up with SH Figuarts for the Deca Ranger Sentai equivalent figures and did the main 5 of those between 2012 and 2013. And from 2019 to 4 years later in 2023, Hasbro managed to release 7 of a possible 9 SPD main Rangers as well as all 5 members of A Squad. Interestingly, only 4 of the main 7 were in regular waves, add in A Squad, where none of them came in regular waves. They also forced you to start collecting A Squad whether you wanted to or not, because the only way to complete the main team of B Squad was to get both blues in a 2-pack, which obviously coincidentally kicked off your A Squad. Very clever tactic there, Hasbro. Awful for matching packaging, but don't worry because they were already on that too between the Omega Ranger and Uniforce Cycle set in a super thin cardboard box, and that was already a time before plastic-free packaging had even been suggested. SPD Yellow then completed the lineup as a retailer one-off release where pre-orders were more important than ever because of, I'm guessing, lower production numbers. Yeah, I think they'd encountered the age-old female figures don't sell very well, do they? hurdle by this point. Shadow Ranger was there way back in Wave 1 of the Lightning Collection. It was then another 11-month wait for the Red Ranger to follow, SPD Omega 5 months later, Blues Double Pack came 4 months after that, another few months before SPD Pink Ranger B Squad came in spring 2021, SPD Green then came in the very next wave. By this point we were so close, a little interruption as they sold the other 4 A Squadders that November, so we had 6 SPD releases just in 2021. Going into spring 2022, a betting man would have expected that pattern to continue for a 4th year and get yellow and complete the most egregiously missing Ranger, surely. She never came. 2022 would come and go without a single SPD figure released. It would actually be a 20-month gap, and mid-2023, when the GameStop in the US exclusive SPD Yellow Ranger in the new no-window packaging would finally come and complete the main team. A frustrating timeline and one that I think justifies my approach to not want to get invested or involved in individual figure reviews, because a bit like Stranger Things, they frustrated people and lost their momentum with how erratic the waiting periods were. You really had to be a Power Ranger lifer to stay invested long enough to complete this team, because they didn't make it easy. The problem with an anthology line is there's no timeline for what's coming and there's no accountability for what's missed. What started as such a good idea became deeply burdensome and aggravating for buyers who just didn't know when we were ever going to finish them. And technically, they still didn't even complete it. SPD Nova Ranger and SPD Cat Ranger were 2 other basic suits they could have done. There's even an SPD Orange too, but that doesn't look all that serious to me. All in all, we mostly got there, and we got more than the Figuarts ever did. Number 4, A Squad. One of the most interesting choices about SPD in the Lightning Collection was the decision to release all 5 members of A Squad. The fact that they did A Squad was impressive, if you think about it. Bandai America ironically never touched these American creations, and if you think of them as the first team of fully American exclusive Rangers since Lord Zed's Dark Rangers, yes those ones, back in Season 2, they've come a long way in American exclusive Bad Rangers. I guess they realised the best way to do it was to commandeer the helmets of a previous team and, change them up a bit, just kind of copy the homework subtly. In Lightning Collection terms, much like the Psychos, they take the role of foot soldiers with this team's season. The A Squad members only had guns too. The hands were poor choices for holding these. It was so frustrating trying to get them to hold these, even for this review. They're a pretty basic mould, but they tried their best with some armour pieces and a flexible rubber chest piece. Having colour matched baddies makes for some fun photo opportunities, and A Squad were a feature that makes the SPD Lightning Collection more Power Rangers centric than the Sentai they're based off, as they don't appear in the source footage series over from Japan. So it's cool that they did this, a little heavy-handed with the initial double pack, and then a little surprising with the simultaneous full team release, not counted in the regular numbering in order to collect the rest of them in one swoop. Actually, I think in America those releases were more staggered across individual retailers, though in the UK the few suppliers that stocked them got all four together and broke our numbering by assigning them a regular wave number. Yeah, it got a bit messy, albeit fun to have them. Also kind of cool we have an in-scale match set of in-space figures. We didn't have that back in the day. Number 3, details, time travel side effect. So because the B Squad team was released completely independently from each other over 4 years, their details really came and went. Helmet outlines were just a disarray. They come and go with visor outlines. It's accurate to be there and a shame that not all the figures could manage it. The ear siren lights and the outlines is white on blue but silver on everyone else, which is accurate. Equally, their SPD team emblems lack detail on some releases more than others. Sometimes they were stencil, sometimes they were more like a decal, stickery kind of thing. That affected their shoulders and helmets. Z had a two-tone yellow torso. Pink was missing the white visor outline and silver collar ring. Red and Omega also missed the silver collar ring. It's really wild how inconsistent these guys are with paint apps. The morphers seem to change between every release. The different versions were ridiculous. They went bigger, more yellow, more silver, and less text. And every figure got a posing holding hand for their Delta Morpher. Z's figure actually got the wrong side hand. So yeah, what am I going to do? Buy a bunch of SPD red and an extra SPD pink just so I can get morphers to match and the females to match with the holding hand? Yeah, I hated this line sometimes, and trying to realise an accurate judgment mode was definitely one of those times. Back in Wave 1 we started with Shadow Ranger, a very nicely done figure with metallic paint and a rubbery shield, and then by the end of the line we degraded to yellow with two-tone torso, wrong morpher, paint and wrong posing hand, and also my initial SPD yellow had the wrong colour arm. Thanks factory, luckily it was easy enough to exchange. It's funny to me how details like the SPD logo got overlooked, but Hasbro seized upon the error in the visor shape of A Squad Pink. Definitely a lesser known helmet replacement program, but just like with Dino Thunder White, you would plead to Hasbro customer support, send a picture to prove that you owned it, and they would ship out the fix, which had more curved edges to the visor. And even after all this, the irony that the original A Squad release in blue had the only helmet not to match the rest. At least A Squad resized the in-space helmets to the right gender, unlike that red and yellow Mighty Morphin gender swap pack. Number 2, each to their own. Something that shouldn't work about SPD and yet somehow kinda does is that the main team has these combinable holstered weapons. Red has the undeniably coolest one. 2 in connecting blasters. They managed to make a moving part on one in order to facilitate the combination in a really flush, fantastic combo weapon way. The rest then have the same sort of weapon, holstered elements of a handle and some sort of baton that fires, I guess. Unfortunately, these don't extend like they should, so you do have to do the classic presto changeo for an extended piece for each. Shadow Ranger just has his sword in his holster, but it's been really nicely painted and is a rare occurrence where Red doesn't have a sword in a season, so it obviously makes an impression. Omega doesn't have any weapons of the traditional sense and just charges up his morpher, so he has a slightly more interactive movable handle on that, as well as an alt hand similar to what we got with the Psycho Rangers with the kind of lightning effects coming off it. Omega also comes with a plain white but detailed SPD Judgment capture card. I guess you could count the Uniforce Cycle as the weapon for Omega. Worth mentioning, Bandai did the Uniforce cycle as well, and never want to miss out on an opportunity, you could even get multiple colours of it. Theirs was very similar, it even had the stabiliser brake to stand it up. Would have been nice to get the Rick Dog thing, but I guess we'll leave that to hopefully 3D printers out there. In terms of the heads, I'd say this is one of the best team for civilian head consistency. I'd rank them as number 6, Bridge. Definitely nothing dramatically wrong here, just maybe a bit soft on the details. Number 5, Z. Similarly, there's nothing fundamentally wrong, just losing points for switching over to that more comic booky proportion style that featured more prominently in their later line releases. Number 4, Sky. Again, a good, recognisable face. I know who this is. Just ranking it here because the other 3 are a bit more impressive. Number 3, Jack. Good on them for attempting a unique hairstyle, a good expression, not as soulless in the eyes as some from this early era of the collection. Number 2, Sid. I think next to Summer from RPM from Wave 17 and Tanya from Zeo from Wave 10, I think this is one of the strongest female head sculpts of the line. And definitely the best human of the SPD squad. Which means number 1 has to be Doggy Kruger. I've definitely made an executive exception to my not ranking non-human heads clause for this one. Disney famously improved on the theme park ilk version that got made for Deca Ranger. Executive producer of SPD, Greg Aronowitz, recently revealed in his 2025 Instagram marking of SPD, there were only 2 of these heads made, so yeah, they really got the mileage out of them for the show. And Hasbro, as soon as Wave 1 had talent on display showing they got it, they knew how to impress. The separate neck piece was particularly impressive. Number 1, Swap Mode. Something quite fun about SPD is how cross-compatible it is, and I'm not just talking about buying multiple red and pink Rangers to perfect my Judgment Mode stance. No, because now we have remastered MMPR green, we can fake the Dragonzord Shield SPD green to give us JJ. And why is there a different Green Ranger taking the mantle anyway? Well, that's an established piece of lore for the show that Rangers got promotions and moved up the number rankings, apart from the girls for some reason. Obviously the girls couldn't just move into a male-shaped stunt suit, but still, you know? So you can swap their civilian heads around to mimic some of the promotions that happened later. Maybe this is a better use for all those Red Rangers after all. There are sadly a number of Rangers that never made it to us. We can turn back to Bandai to see what swap mode looks like beside these newer Rangers. You can definitely see that the Lightning Collection, at least generally, looks more realistically proportioned overall, and generally does have better details, I would say, especially when it gets them correct. And while it's a shame the main Rangers can't ride alongside the Uniforce cycle, or wait, maybe they can, thanks to Bandai's 2005 SPD Jeep. It can be a pose backdrop for the main team. I wouldn't recommend doing much else with them on it, but still a fun one. And Shadow Ranger, well, he can borrow that confusing Time Force cycle now the Blue Centurion is done with it. Even with its shortcomings, whichever way you look at it, SPD is one of the broadestly realised, biggest teams in the Lightning Collection with 7 figures released. While the uneven details are frustrating, a Lightning Collection hallmark as ever, it still makes for a good set of figures, and while it's not as carefully crafted as those Bandai SH Figuarts for Deca Ranger, they are still the better way to show off Power Rangers SPD, as they're currently the only way to show their civilian identities, plus the only representatives of the A-Squad villains. So what do you guys think of SPD's Lightning Collection inclusion, the second of only 2 Disney teams to actually be completed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do check out my Patreon, and thank you to all my existing supporters over there. You might be interested in my unboxing of the Memorial Edition Gokai Cellular. Also, bad news, I broke my SPD Blue neck joint during the filming of this review. Yeah, those neck joints are getting brittle over time, and the civilian heads especially seem to be getting tighter. I got a glass of hot water and dunked each figure after that. Even a bad story leads to something positive though, so check out my Patreon for attempts to resolve that. Also on there is the explanation for why this video has been such a long time coming in installments. Thank you for watching. Until the next time, see you later.